She thought she was being a good mother by telling her son everything. Every worry, every dollar in her savings account, every argument she'd had with her husband of 40 years, every fear about her health. She thought honesty was love. She thought openness was closeness. But 3 years later, that same son was making decisions about her life without asking her, controlling her money, and treating her like a burden instead of a parent. What changed was not her son's character. What changed was how much she had shared, and when. Her story is one that millions of aging parents live through without realizing the damage until it's already done. And by the end of this, you'll understand exactly why the things you share with your grown children can quietly shift the entire balance of your relationship with them. By the time most people reach their 60s, they've spent decades building a life of hard-earned independence. They raised their children, paid off homes, built savings, and learned to handle hardship without asking for help. But something strange happens once those children become adults themselves. Parents who once guarded their privacy fiercely start opening up completely, treating their grown children like best friends, confidants, and even therapists. It feels natural. It feels like the next stage of closeness. Yet psychologists who study family dynamics in later life warn that this shift, when taken too far, can quietly erode a parent's authority, independence, and even their children's respect. The woman in this story, a retired schoolteacher, believed transparency was the foundation of a strong family. When her husband passed away, she told her son every detail of her finances, thinking it would prepare him to help her if anything ever happened to her. She showed him her bank statements, her retirement accounts, and even the password to her online banking. It seemed practical at the time, but slowly, her son began treating her money as a shared resource rather than her own. He questioned her spending. He suggested she didn't need to travel anymore. He hinted that her savings should be protected for the family's future instead of used for her own enjoyment. What started as helpfulness turned into quiet control. Financial oversharing is one of the most common mistakes older parents make, and it rarely comes from bad intentions. It comes from love, from wanting to make things easier for the next generation. But financial independence is deeply tied to personal independence. The moment adult children know every detail of a parent's financial life, they often begin to feel entitled to weigh in on decisions that were never theirs to make. Retirement funds, medical directives, and property should be discussed only in general terms, and only when necessary, such as during estate planning with a licensed professional. The specifics should remain private for as long as possible. The second thing she wishes she had never revealed was the exact contents of her will. She had shown her son and daughter the document years in advance, believing it would prevent conflict later. Instead, it created resentment before she had even passed. Her daughter felt she deserved more. Her son began making comments about how the house should already be considered his. Family estate attorneys often warn against revealing exact inheritance details too early, not because parents should hide the truth forever, but because premature knowledge of inheritance can shift how children treat their parents while they're still alive. It can turn caregiving into a transaction instead of an act of love. The next lesson from her story is about health. When she was first diagnosed with a manageable but chronic condition, she told her children everything, every test result, every worry, every fear about the future. Her intention was to keep them informed. But her son began treating her as fragile long before she actually was. He started making decisions for her, questioning her independence, and speaking to doctors on her behalf without asking her first. Medical professionals who specialize in geriatric care often recommend that aging parents share health information selectively, giving children only what they need to know to help in an emergency, while keeping day-to-day details private until truly necessary. This preserves a parent's dignity and their children's trust in their capability. Another mistake many aging parents make, one she admits she fell into as well, is sharing details about their marriage, especially disagreements or regrets. She had confided in her daughter about arguments she and her husband had years earlier, thinking it would make their relationship feel more human and relatable. Instead, her daughter began seeing her father through a different lens, one shaped by old resentments that had already been resolved between the couple. Marriage counselors often note that adult children are not equipped to hold the emotional weight of their parents' relationship history. What feels like healthy honesty can quietly damage how children view one or both parents for years afterward. The fifth secret she learned to keep to herself involved her own parenting regrets. In an emotional moment, she once told her son she wished she had handled certain parts of his childhood differently. She meant it as vulnerability, as growth. Instead, her son carried those words as validation for old wounds, using them later to justify distance and blame. Family therapists frequently point out that while acknowledging mistakes as a parent can be healthy, doing so with excessive detail or emotional weight can give adult children a permanent narrative of victimhood. Rather than helping the relationship heal, a simple acknowledgement is often more powerful than a detailed confession. The sixth secret involves romantic relationships later in life. After her husband passed, she eventually began seeing someone new. She shared every detail with her children, believing it would help them accept the relationship. Instead, her son used the information to question her judgment, her memory of their father, and even her mental clarity. Grief researchers explain that adult children often struggle far more than parents expect when a surviving parent moves on romantically, and oversharing during this vulnerable time can create judgment rather than understanding. It's often wiser to introduce a new relationship gradually, through actions and time, rather than emotional disclosure. The seventh and final secret she wishes she had guarded more carefully was her plans for retirement living, specifically whether she intended to move in with one of her children someday. She had mentioned it casually years earlier, and that offhand comment became an expectation. Her son began planning around it. Her daughter felt obligated to offer her own home instead. What was meant to be an open-ended thought became a source of quiet family tension for years. Financial planners who work with aging clients often suggest that housing plans should remain flexible and private until a decision is truly necessary, giving parents room to choose independence for as long as possible without feeling pressure from either side. As her story unfolded over the following years, she began to notice a pattern. Every time she gave her children more emotional or informational access to her private life, she lost a small piece of her authority as their parent. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a single moment of betrayal. It was a slow, quiet shift, the kind most people don't notice until they're already living inside its consequences. She realized that respect between parents and adult children isn't built through complete transparency. It's built through boundaries, trust, and the space to remain their own person, even while remaining close. This pattern is far more common than most families realize. Researchers who study intergenerational relationships have found that as parents age, adult children often unconsciously begin reversing roles, treating their parents the way parents once treated them. This shift can be loving and supportive when it comes to physical needs like health emergencies. But when it extends into financial control, decision-making, or emotional dependency, it can quietly rob aging parents of the independence they spent a lifetime building. The key isn't to withhold love or connection. It's to withhold specific categories of information that tend to shift power rather than build understanding. The woman in this story eventually made changes. She began speaking to her children in terms rather than details. Instead of sharing exact numbers, she spoke about being financially secure. Instead of revealing her will, she spoke about having a plan in place with her attorney. Instead of confiding every health worry, she shared only what mattered for their peace of mind. The change wasn't cold or distant. It was intentional. And over time, she noticed something remarkable. Her children began treating her with more respect, not less. They stopped questioning her decisions and started asking for her opinion again, the way they had when they were young, and she was simply their mother, not a person to be managed. Her experience echoes a growing body of research on healthy boundaries in aging families. Family psychologists emphasize that maintaining a sense of self, separate from one's children, is one of the most protective factors against loneliness and loss of purpose in later life. Parents who maintain their own identity, their own privacy, and their own decisions tend to report higher satisfaction in their relationships with their adult children, not lower. Boundaries, it turns out, are not barriers to love. They are the framework that allows love to remain balanced and mutual instead of one-sided or controlling. It's worth noting that none of this means parents should become secretive or distant from their children. Connection, honesty, and shared memories remain essential parts of family life. The difference lies in what kind of honesty is shared. Emotional honesty, expressing love, gratitude, and presence, strengthens relationships. Informational honesty, revealing every financial detail, every health worry, every private thought, can unintentionally shift the emotional architecture of the family. Knowing the difference between the two is often the most valuable lesson aging parents can learn, and one that many only discover after years of unintended consequences. As she reflected on her own journey, she often told friends in similar situations the same advice. Keep your finances private until it's necessary to share them. Keep your will confidential until proper legal guidance calls for disclosure. Share health information selectively, focusing on what your children need to help, not everything you feel. Avoid revealing marital history or personal regrets in ways that place emotional weight on your children. Be cautious about discussing new relationships until they've had time to settle in your own life first. And most importantly, protect your sense of independence, because it is often the very thing that earns you the most respect from the people you love. If there is one truth that emerges from her story and countless others like it, it's this: love does not require full transparency, and privacy does not mean distance. The healthiest relationships between aging parents and adult children are built on trust that develops naturally over time, not information shared too soon or too completely. Protecting certain parts of your life isn't about hiding from your children. It's about preserving your dignity, your independence, and the version of yourself that existed long before you became someone's parent. As you move through this stage of life, remember that your privacy is not selfishness. It's self-respect. Your children will still love you deeply even without knowing every detail of your finances, your marriage, your health, or your plans for the future. What they need most from you isn't full access to your private world. It's your presence, your wisdom, and your example of what it looks like to age with grace, strength, and quiet independence. If this story resonated with you, or reminded you of your own family, take a moment to reflect on which of these boundaries you might need to strengthen in your own life. And if you found value in this story, consider subscribing to this channel Candle of Knowledge for more real, honest content about family, aging, and the wisdom that comes with life experience. Thank you so much for watching, and we wish you peace, strength, and closeness with the people you love most. Until next time, my friend.